All right, good morning. Welcome to day 2 at PhotoPlus Expo 2018. I hope everybody's doing good this morning. We've got so many great programs, and just to let you know, if you missed anything yesterday, you weren't at the show, all the programs were live streamed yesterday. They're on Nikon Live at NikonUSA.com, and you'll be able to go back and see those as often as possible. If you're tuning in from Nikon Live, welcome. We're going to kick this off right away with an incredible photographer that I met last year. Her name is Kelleher, and she runs a very successful newborn photography business out in Oregon. She's going to kick it off with maternity and newborn, simple strategies for making incredible pictures. Let me introduce Nikon Ambassador Kelleher.
Sweetie, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Nikon stage. I appreciate you coming. You know, babies are a very unique niche, and I realize how specialized they are. However, what comes with newborns is something incredibly emotional that applies to all aspects of portrait photography. And if you're a portrait photographer and you understand how to work with newborns and maternity, you've opened yourself up to a whole lucrative area of the field that will produce incredible profitability for your business. So I'm going to talk today about just simple strategies you can use in your newborn work and maternity to really create incredible, successful images. I'll talk a little bit about the Z7 and how I used it in pre-production format, and how incredible it is for this kind of work, and how versatile it is in terms of this kind of work. So first of all, I'm going to start off with a story that's a little sad, okay? This is Libby. Libby died in my presence, okay? She was on the table working with me, and she basically stopped breathing. I was photographing her in this exact session, these exact images. She was on the table with me, and she stopped breathing and turned blue. Her lips went a weird color. My assistant and I were standing there going, oh my gosh, that does not look right. She was super sleepy the whole session, and all of a sudden she just started turning blue, and I realized she's not breathing. I picked her up, started whacking her on the back, realizing that she had basically had SIDS right in front of me, sudden infant death syndrome, okay? Scary, scary stuff. Yeah, wow. I just went into journalist panic mode where you just become clinical and you're like, I gotta get this fixed, okay? She's fine. The story ends well. Today, she's a thriving 2-year-old. She has serious medical problems. She has a feeding tube. There are issues going on. It's genetic. She was born with it. But at the time, her parents did not know. And when they brought her to me along, you know, I'd been photographing their family for several years. When she brought her to me, there was no knowledge of these medical issues at all. And so by having my safety training and having photographed many, many newborns in my career, we quickly knew something was not right. Okay, something was not right and that we needed to fix it. So I start with this story because there really is no substitute for training and safety when it comes to babies. They are very fragile individuals. They're very fragile, and they don't have an immune system right yet. They're still kind of working that out. So as a photographer working with this delicate genre, you need to be trained in safety. And one of the best ways to go to that is to the Accredited Professional Newborn Photographers International Association. They have actual training for newborn photographers online on how to be safe. So my education company is called Jewel Education. You can find me here at jewel-images.com as well as jewel-education.com. There's some freebies and fun things there if you want to pick it up that relate to portrait photography. Now, I don't just do babies. You know, I started in newborn and maternity. That was kind of where I began. But I do children and families. They're probably about 50% of my business. And family photography, that whole niche is just incredibly profitable. And the cool thing about starting with babies is that they grew up, right? they grow. There's no manual, but they grow, right? And so families come back year after year and want to have their images taken. So you're in the right place right now, right here. If perhaps you're a wedding photographer getting requests for newborns and you need to kind of figure this out and do a new product line. You recognize that my brides are getting married, and what does that mean? That means, oh, baby's next, right? Kissing in a tree, K-I-S-S-I-N-G, right? So the baby's coming. You can take advantage of that by starting a newborn line in your business. You're in the right place if your brides are getting pregnant and asking you to shoot maternity. How many of that happened to you? Wedding photographers. Anybody here? Yeah, it's like, oh no. Weddings and maternity and studio, completely different animal. And posing a pregnant woman is way different than posing a bride. You got this thing in the way. And how do you deal with it and how do you light it, okay? You've had trouble getting your babies to look curled in imagery. That's sometimes a challenge. You want to shoot newborns, but you're just not sure where to start or what's involved, okay? The gear you're using to photograph newborns isn't giving you the results you want. This is a common problem. And I'm going to take a look at some of the Nikon equipment that I use that really changed my career in terms of how my imagery began to look. Your newborns won't sleep and your sessions are taking more than 2 hours to do, which is a common problem. I hear stories all the time, oh, 3 and 4 hours. Oh my gosh, that is too long and not profitable. So get them to under 2 hours. But really what it comes down to is there's just no substitute for this kind of imagery. You guys, how many of you shoot portraits in general? Just portraits, okay? When you capture emotion in a portrait, it sells. There's something about a connection to an image. It's just like being on vacation. We take snapshots, right, with your cell phone on vacation. Why do you do that? Why do you take images on vacation? To go back to that moment, right? To be able to be with your family and go, oh yeah, we were in Hawaii and Maui. Well, that was so fun, okay? Your clients are doing the same thing in the studio. When you're photographing them and creating an emotional experience for them, then when they look at that imagery again, they're going to go back to that emotional moment. And when you can solidify that in your business, what happens to your numbers? Up. Profitability. Basically, emotional imagery sells. It's very profitable. And in a newborn time of a life or pregnancy, this is a rare occurrence for a family. I mean, what, 2, 3, 4 times generally at the most. I know people who have 9 or 10 kids, but let's face it, that's a very expensive endeavor, right? How many of you have more than 4? No, good, yeah, see, I'm like the one and done camp. Like, that's too much for me. But anyway, it's very profitable and it sells. So what you'll learn here in the next 20 minutes or so is all about the go-to methods for getting babies to sleep, the 4 key components to remember that will help nail your images every time. And this does not just apply to newborn and maternity work. It applies to all portrait work, okay? The right gear that contributes to the artistry and design of your images. Why niching into a specialty? Whether it be newborn, female portraits, headshots, I don't care what it is. Why niching is so important to your business and what it's done for me. Okay, let's look at the secret to sleep. How many of you had a newborn in your life, your own child, and did the walk around the kitchen island at 2 in the morning trying to get the kid to go back to sleep? Yeah, been there, done that, got that t-shirt multiple times, right? And you think it's never gonna end. You're in that phase of parental exhaustion and you just want the baby to go to sleep, right? Here's the secrets. You have to replicate the womb. And doing that in a cavernous studio that's open and bright and downright cold compared to a newborn's mindset is a challenging aspect. I want to introduce you to something, the 5 secrets I call the 5 S's, okay? This is how to get any baby to sleep. First of all, put them in a side-lying position, on their side or on their belly. They just love it for some reason. Now, of course, all the doctors tell us never to put a baby on its stomach when it's in a crib, right, for fear of SIDS. However, when you're holding them in your arms, to put them on the side is actually very effective in getting them to sleep. Secondly, making the shh sound. I use an iPhone app. It's called the white noise app. We put that in the studio right next to baby's ear, literally right here on full blast, because their hearing is not fully developed at this time. And it replicates the sound of the blood flow in mama's womb. They love that sound, okay? Sucking. Babies have an innate desire, an instinct to suck. So a pacifier instantly calms them down, all right? Swinging. Just doing a little rocky swing. You know, the walk around the kitchen island at 2 in the morning? That's what you're doing. You're swinging a baby along, and getting that rocking motion the same as the baby would have felt inside the womb. And finally, swaddling a baby, okay? Wrapping a baby makes a happy baby. They want to be tight and contained. When their arms fling out and their legs fling out, they are bound to wake up and not give you anything you want in terms of imagery. So let's talk about the 4 elements of successful images. And guys, this applies not, I'm going to obviously use babies as an example, but these concepts can be transferred over into any portrait, okay? First of all, your camera angle. The angle at which your camera is in relationship to the subject. Now in newborns, that happens to be their head. Hi, welcome. That happens to be their head, okay? How do you want the plane of the focus to be to the baby's head? You want the baby's head to be the closest thing to the camera. That's what's going to give you the most beautiful image of a newborn. With a woman posed in maternity or a posed portrait, same thing. I get my mamas to lean a little bit forward, shoot from above, especially a heavier set woman. All of a sudden, remember, whatever's closer to the camera is bigger, right? So if I make the hips look a little bit smaller by having her come towards me, then all of a sudden I'm shooting from above, her face and her breast line is going to be the closest thing to the camera, and hence slenderize her hips, right? So you can do that with a baby too. Clearly I'm making their head kind of the largest part of the image, but it also makes them the focus of it. Your posing angle, okay? The posing angle is basically how your subject is oriented to himself, okay? Same thing applies with maternity, okay? If your subject matter has things that are very symmetrical or standing very straight across with shoulders like this, it tends to be very static. The minute you have them spread their feet, pop one hip to the side, make the shoulder go any direction, bring an arm back and forward. Now all of a sudden, we're making things asymmetrical, okay? Now here in newborn photography, he's very symmetrical on purpose. Again, there's no hard and fast rule. It's simply a matter of what looks good and training your eye to see that. In maternity, it's that all too coveted S-curve that we love so much. The S-curve creates a line on the woman's body that's very feminine and lovely, and that's why we appreciate posing that has that curve. The next time you look at an image that you're like, wow, I really love that one. I mean, look at Dixie Dixon's work. If you look at her work, every woman she poses has that S-curve, and you'll start to see it. And you can literally draw an S through her images on the woman and see that come to life, okay? Now, with babies, again, that lighting angle, and honestly, any portrait, right? If you get the lighting angle correct, you've nailed it. Lighting has all kinds of different variabilities to it. You can have hard light, you can have soft light, but how the light is positioned to the subject is whether or not you're going to nail your image. If you're shooting light from below a baby, no. The same rules apply to babies as apply to regular portraits. It needs to be flattering light. So what I use in my studio is mono lights. I use 5 and 7 foot octabanks with white umbrellas to create high key when I need it. But that lighting must be directional, okay? And you can see it. This was shot on a floor. You can see the lighting coming, catch lights coming from above where the child is looking into the lens, okay? So the light is brushing across, creating soft shadows. Look for the shadows to find where the light is coming from. Light travels in a straight line, baby, and it ain't curving. So if you can see the shadows, you'll look the other way and go, that's where the light's coming from, right? Even if you don't have catch lights, you can tell where the light is by looking at the shadows. And to make something look three-dimensional on a flat plane, we must create shadows, right? It's an absolute must. Finally, your lens choice and camera choice, okay? The lens really creates the look. I cannot stress this enough. You must choose the right lens for what you're working with. So what I use is several different bodies within my studio. I use the D5 mainly for extremely fast-moving subjects. You know, the D5, a lot of sports photographers and photojournalists use it. They use it for a reason. This sucker's fast. I can keep up with a 2-year-old moving toddler running around my cyc wall, no problem with this thing. It focuses fast, it shoots fast, and that's how I capture those spur-of-the-moment moments with my youngsters, okay? So bring on those little kids. The Z7 is now in my arsenal. That thing, I could not get it in my hands fast enough. Incredible camera. The mirrorless system, I have never shot with mirrorless before, and I am hook, line, and sinker, rein me in, because it is just incredible to look through an electronic viewfinder. If you've never done it, I highly recommend it. Because now, all of a sudden, when you're looking in that viewfinder, what you see is what you get. I'm not even metering anymore. I mean, it's ridiculous. I'm like, oh, I don't even have to look at my meter anymore. It's just what's in my, and part of me is like, oh, this is really gonna challenge photography because the newbies are gonna come in and not understand exposure at all. But just the ability to do that and the speed at which I can create an image is amazing, okay? The other thing that's amazing about this lens and my favorite part about it, or this camera, is the mount. Because it's so large, I have no idea how the guys at Nikon did this, but God bless them, because that mount is huge. So what happens is, do you have one of those lenses, like a 50-1.4 or a 85-1.4, and you just aren't quite confident shooting it at 1.4 because there's a sweet spot, okay? It's usually like around f2, f2.5. This mount eliminated that problem. So I can now shoot my lenses at f1.4 with no fear. It's like the focal plane has become more consistent. Like it doesn't move, it doesn't sphere, it doesn't do anything odd. It's like it's right there and you can trust it. You know, and so that for me with newborns and creating that beautiful bouquet, that out of focus background was critical for me, and that's why I've completely switched to using the Z7 with my newborns, okay? All right, I use the D850 oftentimes for megapixels and dynamic range, and the Z7 has the megapixels as well as the dynamic range, but the 850 is still an excellent arsenal in my kit, and I use it oftentimes for families and maternity, okay? Especially if I know I'm doing a family portrait that I intend to blow up huge for a client's home, okay? For lens choice, the 85mm 1.4 or 105 1.4 is critical to my arsenal for the compression. It makes incredible portraits for families. The 50mm I use all the time for my beanbag work with babies, mainly for that bokeh. With the Z-mount lens, the Nikon Z7, the S-Series 35-1.8 makes it awesome to shoot babies by yourself. You're close enough, but it doesn't give you that weird distortion that a lot of wide-angle lenses give you with a portrait. So this lens is incredible, especially when, of course, used in combination with the Z7. Man, it gives me the ability to get that negative space, but still beautiful out-of-focus backgrounds and a clean look. Then finally, I use the macro 105-2.8. That bokeh, those details come in. I mean, I can capture those little lips and those little highlights down to the pore, okay? Now, the beautiful part about the Z7 and how it operates is that beautiful little adapter right there in the middle. It allows me to go from an F-mount lens, everything I already have in my arsenals, beat up and all, okay, can now be simply attached to the Z7 with this adapter. And let me tell you, my lenses perform the same, if not better, on this camera than they do on my D5. There is no change in how it operates. The adapter is seamless, it's lightweight, incredible ability, and that's, I think, the signature of the Z7 is the ability to use all the previous lenses that are in your kit with the new camera. All right. Lucrative Portraits. My average in my studio is around $2,000 per session with each client. It's so important to create a varied gallery in your work, but yet one that also coordinates. I want to be able to use all of these images in an album, on a wall, so color tonality, niching in what I do, showing my clients that I'm an expert in my field is truly the way to attract the client who's perfect for me. Niching makes you that expert in the field. If you do everything, then you're not going to fully attract the perfect client for you. Think about like the German auto mechanic. If you own a BMW, you're not going to go to the Subaru mechanic down the street, are you? you're going to find the guy who works on German cars, okay? It's so critical and important in photography because it's such an emotional process. Family portraits, weddings, this is something that people want memories for the rest of their life. So for you to be a niche, an expert in your field, an authority, that's what's ultimately going to attract the perfect client for you, okay? It builds your trust in the client. And when a client is spending $2,000 on a session, they need to trust you, right? They need to trust that you're going to provide the product for them, that you're the right person for the job, and once they trust you, they will give you that money and allow you to do the work for them. So building that trust creates the buying triggers and it makes your client go, yes, I want this person as my photographer. The buying triggers, research them. I don't have a ton of time to get through them, but basically these are what make people want to buy something. If you are an authority in your field, if there's not many of you, then the desire to get you is even better. When other people and reviews are made on Google or on your site, other people have used you, then that has that social proof of people wanting to work with you, okay? Reciprocity. When you give things to your potential clients, they want to give something in return. Like when someone gives you a gift, you're like, oh, that was so nice. Oh, I better get something for their birthday too. You know, it's the same concept and it works with marketing as well. Then if they genuinely like you and they're committed to doing something to you, they will be consistent and do that. So when you hit these buying triggers by niching in your business, all of a sudden you are gaining that trust. And everybody asks me, well, why would I market to fewer clients? That seems crazy, right? Well, it hits your ideal client right in the heart, okay? When you target her mindset, the woman you're trying to attract as your client, and her emotions, and her psychology, those triggers, you win. It basically comes down to this. If you try to be everyone's photographer, you end up being no one's first choice. You devalue your brand and dilute your authority in a market because you're not a specialist in your field. Make sense? So that's why you don't market to everybody. You market to the one ideal client that you truly want, and that will attract those others in. I love marketing. I could talk about marketing from here to high heaven. So wrapping it all up today, safety is first and foremost when it comes to newborns. It really is. So be safe. If you want to get into this niche, I can't tell you how lucrative it is, but be safe. They're precious little commodities, have liability insurance. If that baby had died on that beanbag permanently, I would have been up a creek and losing a lot financially because if I wasn't insured, okay? When in doubt, wrap. Wrap it, wrap. A wrapped baby is a happy baby. Remember those 4 elements of great images: camera angle, lighting angle, posing angle, lens choice, and this applies not only to newborn and maternity portraits, but also to female portraits, anything and everything. So it's just taking those same simple concepts in photography and applying them to a different genre. You nail these 4 things in your work, and you will be incredible at whatever genre you decide to pick. A varied gallery, shoot a varied gallery, but a consistent one. Clients love consistency. And then, of course, figure out where you want to niche, okay? Figure out what makes your passion fly, okay? And when you do that, you'll be happier in your work. You'll be shooting what you want to shoot, whether it's babies, weddings, commercial, fashion, it doesn't matter. But niching makes you an authority in what you do. So thank you so much, especially to Nikon for inviting me on the stage today. As always, it's very humbling to be here. If you would like to find me, I'm on Facebook. We have a group, Photography and Business Education. I teach a ton of business. It's what I'm known for, and we discuss all that in the group on a daily basis. So I can take questions if anybody does have them, and they don't necessarily have to apply to newborns, as I know it's a very specialized niche. Any questions? You guys good? Rock and roll. I love this. No questions. Come on. Anybody?
Ladies and gentlemen. Oh, we got one.
One. Yes.
Hold on. We have a mic for you, sir.
Microphone.
Any tips on psychology?
Tips on psychology in sales?
No, in working with the babies and the parents.
Working with the babies. He asked tips on psychology and working with babies and parents. Well, first of all, just understanding that this is a very sensitive time of their life, and moms are hormonal, for lack of a better word. You know, things are starting to stabilize, and we're a little nuts after giving birth to a baby. So a lot of trust involves reassurance, calming, and just showing that you're confident in what you're doing, and that you know what you're doing. It goes a long, long way. And sometimes you have to fake it till you make it. You know, sometimes you have to just kind of show that confidence, even though you don't necessarily have it. But in terms of selling, you have to understand the client goes through a very specific psychological process when they're buying something. It must be, you must sell from the beginning. You got to start planting the seed of the sale very early on in the relationship with the client, and then guiding them through the products that they might want to consider, and then showing them the session and how good it is. And then they go home and they get excited and they're like, oh yeah, I want to do that album that she was looking at. I want to do that wall series that we were looking at. They start going home and looking where it might go in their space. They start talking budget. Then by the time they get to the ordering appointment, they've made decisions. The psychology, it's like watering a seed and watching it grow. You got to put the seed in the ground right when you first talk to them on the phone. And then as you grow through the process with them, you water it, fertilize it. Then at the sales appointment, the bloom will be there, and you just get to pluck it with the credit card. Okay? So I could go in a whole topic on buying psychology, but it is fascinating the way people think when they make large purchasing decisions. And overall, just building that sense of trust, I think, is the best course of action, and doing that with kindness, openness, and authenticity. Okay? Any other questions? We good? Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Julia Kelleher, Nikon ambassador. All right, so how many people love taking pictures of places that